Hey guys, my name is Sashah Handal and I am your host for today's episode of Alt Baking Bootcamp with Well+Good. Today we're going to make no waste almond cookies. So, 'tis the season to bake cookies galore. And the cool thing about these cookies is that they're gluten-free and vegan, so you can give them to all of your friends, even the ones that have dietary restrictions. Let's dive in. So, almond milk is a frequent ingredient in our household, and lately we've been experimenting with making it on our own. So, after you've blended up all of the water and the almonds, you're left with this chunky almond pulp, almond meal, if you will. And so what we're gonna do is take that meal, turn it into a flour, and then make cookies out of it. Super simple recipe to follow. I've got a 1.5 cups of almonds that is soaking in 2 cups of water. I've also added 2 dates and a big splash of vanilla extract because that's what I like to flavor my almond milk with. You could, of course, do some honey. You could do a little almond extract if you like it a little bit more almondy. Essentially, what you just need to remember is that it's always 1 part almonds to 2 parts liquid. I've let these soak for about 10 minutes because I have a very high-speed blender on hand. But if you were using something with slightly less of a strong motor, then you might want to let these soak overnight. Cool. So I wasn't able to get exactly 3 cups of water in there, hence the extra cup of water on the side. Let's pour it in. On first, then high. So I would say you just wanna blend long enough to really get those almonds crushed up and incorporated into the water. Yeah, it's starting to froth. It's almost like gained a little bit of volume here. So it looks like we're ready to strain out the almond meal. The almond meal, it's all floating in there in chunky little bits that you obviously don't want in your super smooth almond milk. That's where this comes in handy. This is a nut bag. It's very fine mesh. You could use a cheesecloth. You could use a really fine mesh strainer, but it's gotta be super fine, otherwise the chunks are gonna go right through. So I like to do this in 2 or 3 parts just to make sure I'm not spilling over. So I'm gonna line my bowl with the bag. Fold the bag down so that it kind of holds itself up, and then you can just start to pour it right inside. Like I said, I like to do it in 2 or 3 bouts, just so that I'm not pouring in more than I can handle. From here, all you need to do is squeeze very gently, gently being the operative word, otherwise you're gonna spray almond milk everywhere. Let's be honest, you might not get all of the liquid out. What's most important is that you get most of it out, because you're then going to take what's left over, dry it out, and make it into a flour. So, I've got my sheet tray ready, and then I'm just going to, oops, almond milk everywhere, I told you. Dump this out, get as much of it out as I can. See how it's like, kind of like wet sand? Once you dry that out, it'll actually become a really nice fine powder. Okay, cool. So that's done. And then you'll just continue to do that with whatever's left. And then here, you can pour it into the same vessel you used to soak them, no waste. You can see how creamy, how thick, how beautiful the color is. It looks awesome. Rinse and repeat. This makes just about, I think it's 4 cups of almond milk. Oh my God, so good. It's like some of the almond milk that you buy in stores has to add stabilizers to keep the shelf life a little bit longer, but this doesn't need anything. And the texture is just perfect, and you can keep it in your fridge for about 3 to 4 days. So now that all of your almond milk has been strained, this is what you're left with. I have it just on a small sheet tray, and I'm gonna spread it out pretty evenly to allow for the drying process to happen as quick as possible. You also wanna kind of get rid of any large clumps. That way, when you go to use it as your flour, it's pretty fine. So push it over to the edges. From here, all you need to do is put it in the oven at 350 for about 10 minutes. After those 10 minutes, I would pull it out, give it a few tosses, check if there are any wet spots still lingering around, and then put it back in the oven for another 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, so really easy cookie recipe. You made your own almond flour. Congratulations, you're a chef. So you're gonna take 3/4 of a cup of that almond flour, dump it right into your mixing bowl. I've got a 1/4 cup of coconut flour, also going right in there. Here I've got a little medley of things. Arrowroot starch, just to make things nice and crumbly, because I'm looking for more of a shortbread texture with these cookies. You could also use cornstarch if you have that on hand. And then we've got cardamom, cinnamon, and a little bit of salt. You don't have to use those spices. I just really love cardamom and almond meal together. And then we've got our oil and our sweetener also combined together in the same jar. Okay, so now we just mix it together. Really, really simple. I like to take the edges, turn my bowl as I turn my spatula, and take the flour kind of over and then onto itself. Now, it'll take just a few minutes, but essentially you wanna make sure that all of the dry ingredients have been coated with the wet ones. It'll resemble a texture of like wet sand, kind of. So once you can kind of gather it with your hand and form it into a ball, you should be ready to scoop. Okay, and now I'm gonna take my cookie scoop, dive right in. We're gonna pat it down and kind of pack it into the scoop. And then from there, pray and hope that it doesn't crumble all over the place. Pretty decent. So you'll do that with the rest. So all you need to do here is just take the fork, press it directly on top of the cookie. Typically, you want the cookie to kind of hold its shape. So you don't want to go full steam ahead. You want to be a little careful in your placement and your pressure. It's okay if your crumbs start to fall over the edges. And now I'm gonna put them in the oven at 350 for 8 to 10 minutes, depending on how hot your oven is. And of course, give them a turn halfway through the baking process. All right, so we baked our cookies, we let them cool, and they actually came together quite nicely. Let's give them a taste. Oh, wow, they're really good. It like melts in your mouth. Very similar to shortbread. And that's definitely from the arrowroot and the coconut oil. There's a little hint of coconut flour, and if you're not into that, you could of course do the whole thing with just your almond meal. So good, so simple, and you get 2 bangs for $1. Almond milk, almond meal, cookies from your almond meal. The recipe for both of these things is in the description below. And if you like them, please subscribe to Well+Good for more alt baking bootcamp. See you later.